More than 17 Russian soldiers were reportedly put out of action in a single day, and shortly afterward, transport trucks, fuel vehicles, Bukanka vans, supply depots, and communication targets continued to come under attack from Ukrainian drones across several frontline sectors. That number is not only about manpower losses, it points to a style of warfare that is expanding much faster than before. Ukraine is no longer using drones simply to hunt individual soldiers in trenches. It is increasingly targeting the systems that allow Russia's military to keep operating. From Lyman to Donetsk, Russian infantry can be detected shortly after leaving a tree line. A fuel truck can be destroyed before reaching its destination. A supply depot can be struck before ammunition and equipment reach frontline units. Even a small communication antenna can become a target, because losing that connection may slow an entire unit's response during combat. The pressure now extends far beyond the battlefield itself. High-value targets in St. Petersburg, including the Boyki corvette and a major oil facility in the Baltic region, suggest that the drone war is moving deeper into Russia's strategic rear. So what happens when Ukraine is no longer targeting only soldiers, but also fuel, logistics, communications, and assets far behind the front? And how long can Russia maintain its operational tempo when every link in its military system may be watched from above? Let's find out on military force. Ukrainian UAV units are keeping heavy pressure on Russian forces around Lyman and Donetsk, where movement near the front line carries higher risk than before. Soldiers can still use trees, broken buildings, shelters, and dirt roads to reduce exposure, but those places can become markers on a drone operator's screen. A Russian group does not need to reach a Ukrainian trench to become vulnerable. It can be detected while leaving cover, crossing a field, gathering near a ruined house, or moving equipment toward a firing position. The Lyman sector is dangerous because the terrain gives both armies places to hide, but it creates predictable routes of movement. Forest belts, narrow paths, and scattered settlements can protect infantry from direct ground fire, yet they force soldiers into channels that drones can watch for long periods. Once Ukrainian operators spot movement, they can follow the target, study its direction, and decide whether it is part of an assault, a supply movement, or a small infiltration attempt. In Donetsk, the situation is shaped by density. Fighting is intense, positions are close, and Russian forces often rely on small infantry groups to probe for weak spots. These groups may look flexible on the ground, but from above they can become easier to track because every stop, turn, and pause reveals intent. Ukrainian drones are no longer acting only as strike weapons. They are also part of a wider observation system that turns the front line into a monitored space. Reconnaissance UAVs can locate targets, while FPV drones or other strike assets can be directed toward them later. This shortens the gap between detection and attack, and Russian troops have less time to regroup, hide, or correct a mistake once they are seen. A few soldiers moving through a ruined area can show where the next assault route may be forming. A vehicle parked near a shelter can suggest that supplies or reinforcements are nearby. Even an abandoned road can become a warning line when drones record repeated movement through the same approach. For Ukraine, the target is not only the soldier or vehicle, but also the pattern that reveals how Russian forces are preparing to move. For Moscow, the larger challenge is uncertainty. Infantry cannot know when a tree line is being watched. Drivers cannot be sure that a shelter is still safe. Commanders may struggle to move men forward without exposing the direction of their next push. Pressure on the front line is only the first layer. Once Ukraine can detect infantry and vehicles early, the next targets are the weapons and supplies that allow Russian attacks to continue. That growing pressure is becoming harder for Russian units to ignore. A Russian Grad rocket launcher, fuel trucks, supply depots, and military transport vehicles are increasingly appearing on the target lists of Ukrainian drone units. These are not random targets selected for convenience. They are assets that help Russian forces maintain combat operations across active sectors of the front. When such equipment is damaged or destroyed, the effects can extend far beyond the immediate loss of a single vehicle or weapon system. The Grad multiple rocket launcher remains one of the most widely used Russian artillery systems in the war. Its value comes from its ability to fire large salvos of rockets over a wide area within a short period of time. A single battery can place significant pressure on Ukrainian defensive positions and support advancing infantry units. Because of that role, a Grad launcher does not need to be actively firing to become a valuable target. Modern reconnaissance drones make concealment more difficult than in earlier stages of the conflict. A launcher hidden near a tree line, parked inside a temporary shelter, or positioned behind a structure can still be detected if movement around the site attracts attention. Once identified, the launcher becomes vulnerable not only during combat operations, but also during preparation, relocation, or reloading. Fuel vehicles occupy a different but equally important position within the Russian military system. Armored vehicles, trucks, generators, engineering equipment, and many support assets depend on a steady supply of fuel. Combat power can decrease quickly when fuel distribution becomes less reliable. A vehicle that never reaches its destination may affect many other vehicles that were depending on its cargo. This reality helps explain why Ukrainian drone operators continue to focus on fuel transport whenever opportunities appear. A burning fuel truck represents more than the loss of one vehicle. It can interrupt schedules, force route changes, and create uncertainty for units waiting farther forward. Drivers may be required to travel longer distances or use less efficient roads to reduce exposure. Those adjustments consume additional time and resources. Supply depots occupy another critical place in the military chain. Every army depends on a constant flow of ammunition, food, spare parts, batteries, communications equipment, medical supplies, and engineering materials. Frontline formations consume large quantities of resources each day. Replacing those resources requires a network of storage sites and transportation routes operating continuously behind the battlefield. When a depot is struck, commanders must often shift supplies from other locations or reorganize delivery plans. Even when losses are limited, additional movement creates new challenges. More vehicles may be needed. More personnel may be assigned to transportation tasks. Alternative storage areas may need to be established. Each adjustment increases workload throughout the support system. Military transport vehicles face similar pressure. Trucks moving cargo between depots and combat formations serve as the connection between stored supplies and operational units. Without transportation, resources remain useful only on paper. Ammunition stored far from the battlefield cannot support troops who need it immediately. Equipment waiting in a warehouse cannot help soldiers at the front. The growing use of drones against these targets reflects an effort to place pressure on several layers of military activity at the same time. Direct combat remains important, but sustaining combat also requires fuel, transportation, storage facilities, and fire support systems. Each category contributes to the overall effectiveness of a military force. As Grad launchers, supply depots, and fuel vehicles come under greater observation, the effects can spread beyond the immediate strike location. Decisions made far behind the front may become more complicated, while routine movements become harder to carry out without risk. Once these support assets begin facing constant pressure, the battlefield extends beyond trenches and assault routes. It starts reaching deeper into the logistics structure that allows Russian operations to continue day after day. Signum Battalion has become an important drone unit on the Lyman front, where Russian infantry groups search for gaps in Ukraine's defense. The fighting here is not always shaped by armored columns. In many cases, the pressure comes from small teams moving through forest belts, ruined buildings, narrow paths, and villages. Their mission is direct but dangerous. They try to get close enough to test Ukrainian positions, locate weak points, and prepare the ground for a larger push. For Russian commanders, small infantry groups offer a way to reduce exposure. A few soldiers can move through broken terrain more easily than a vehicle column. They can use trees for cover, crawl through houses, or wait inside shelters until the next movement window opens. On the ground, this method may appear flexible. From the air, it creates patterns that trained drone crews can read. Signum's role begins before the clash at the trench line. UAV operators look for movement that does not fit the background. A shape crossing between trees, a group pausing near a ruined wall, or a soldier moving from one patch of cover to another can reveal the start of an infiltration attempt. Once spotted, the target is not treated as an isolated figure. The drone crew studies direction, spacing, speed, and likely destination. That process matters because small assaults depend on surprise. If Russian infantry can reach a blind area before being detected, they may force Ukrainian defenders to react under pressure. If they are detected early, their route can be watched, their cover can be marked, and their next position can be predicted. The coordination between reconnaissance UAVs, FPV drones, and ground fire gives Ukraine several options. A drone may continue tracking the group while another system prepares to strike. FPV drones can be sent toward individual soldiers, while other weapons can target the area around them. This layered response makes movement harder for infantry that depends on short bursts of speed and concealment. The psychological pressure is also important. Russian soldiers moving through Lyman's tree lines cannot know whether they are still hidden. A pause near cover may not be safe if the route has already been recorded. A sudden sprint across open ground may only confirm the target's direction. Even when a drone does not strike immediately, its presence can force hesitation, separation, or panic. For Signum, the aim is not only to destroy one group, it is to deny Russia the ability to build pressure quietly. Small infantry movements can become the first step in a wider assault, especially when they identify trenches, firing points, or gaps between units. By stopping these movements early, Ukraine can reduce the risk of surprise attacks and keep Russian pressure from forming into a stronger push. Lyman is becoming a contest between infiltration and observation. Russia tries to use small groups to move through difficult terrain, while Ukraine uses drones to turn that terrain into a watched space. The side that reads movement first gains the advantage. This gives defenders more time to prepare fire, warn nearby positions, and prevent a small probe from becoming an assault. Those realities are reshaping how both armies approach frontline movement. Signum's work shows how even a small infantry group can become a target from the moment it begins to move. But infantry pressure is only one part of Russia's assault system. Trucks, fuel, and transport routes decide how long that pressure can continue once fighting expands. Ukrainian UAV units are now putting growing pressure on Russian logistics vehicles and fuel carriers, because those targets decide how long frontline units can keep fighting. A truck moving toward the front may look less dramatic than a tank in combat, but its cargo can be just as important. Ammunition, food, drone batteries, spare parts, medical kits, and repair tools all move through the same support network. When one vehicle is destroyed, the delay can spread across several units that were waiting for those supplies. This is why logistics trucks have become valuable targets for Ukrainian drone teams. A Russian assault group may still have soldiers ready to move, but without enough ammunition and basic support, its ability to maintain pressure can fall quickly. If medical supplies arrive late, wounded troops may face greater risk. If batteries or spare parts do not reach drone operators, reconnaissance and strike missions can become harder to sustain. The loss of one truck may not stop a whole offensive, but repeated losses can weaken the daily rhythm of operations. Fuel carriers create an even more sensitive problem. Russian armored vehicles, artillery tractors, transport trucks, engineering machines, and generators all depend on fuel to stay active. A fuel truck burning on a road is not only a visible explosion. It can mean that vehicles waiting farther forward receive less fuel than planned, or that another convoy must take a longer and more dangerous route. In a war shaped by movement and reaction time, fuel shortages can reduce flexibility very quickly. The pressure becomes stronger when these strikes force Russia to change how it moves supplies. Drivers may avoid direct roads, wait for darkness, use smaller groups, or move through damaged routes that slow traffic. Each adjustment can reduce the amount of material reaching the front on time. A route that once supported regular deliveries may become less reliable if drone crews watch it repeatedly. Even when trucks survive, the need to move more carefully can reduce the speed of the entire logistics chain. Artillery units are among the first to feel the impact of slower supply. Russian guns need large amounts of ammunition to maintain fire support for infantry. If shells arrive late, the rate of fire may fall. If transport becomes risky, commanders may hold ammunition farther back, which creates another delay between storage and firing positions. Infantry assaults then enter battle with weaker cover, less pressure on Ukrainian defenses, and fewer chances to exploit short openings. The same pressure affects vehicles near the front. Transport trucks move personnel between staging areas and fighting positions. Repair vehicles help recover damaged equipment. Generators power command posts, communication points, and bases. When fuel and cargo movements become less stable, these support tasks become harder to coordinate. The front line may still appear active, but the system behind it starts working with more friction. Ukraine is not only trying to destroy what is already fighting at the trench line. It is trying to slow the flow that keeps Russian forces supplied, fueled, repaired, and ready for the next assault. Attacks on logistics help stretch time, increase risk, and force Russia to spend more effort on movement. But an army also needs communication to turn supplies and soldiers into coordinated action. That brings the next target into focus. The St. Petersburg drone strikes marked a wider stage in Ukraine's long-range campaign, because the targets were far from the front and close to Russia's political and economic core. On June 3, 2026, Ukraine said its drones hit high-value sites in the area, including the Boyki corvette at a naval facility near Kronstadt and a major oil facility in the Baltic region. The distance itself carried a message. The war was no longer reaching only occupied territory or border regions. It was touching one of Russia's most important cities. St. Petersburg matters because it is not just another urban center. It is a major port city, a symbol of Russian state power, and a gateway to the Baltic Sea. It also hosts important energy, shipping, industrial, and naval infrastructure. A strike there creates military pressure, but it also creates public pressure, because explosions and fires in a city of that size are harder to hide from citizens, investors, and foreign partners. The reported strike on Boyki added a military dimension to the operation. A corvette is not a frontline trench asset. It belongs to the maritime layer of Russian power, where ships support patrols, escort duties, surveillance, and regional presence. If a vessel can be threatened while it is at or near a naval facility, then the risk picture changes. Protection is no longer only about defending ships at sea. It also includes docks, repair areas, air defense coverage, and the routes drones may use to reach the target. The oil facility carried a different kind of value. Energy infrastructure helps fund the state, support industry, and maintain wartime logistics. A successful strike on such a site can cause fires, disrupt local operations, and force authorities to spend resources on security, repairs, and air defense. Even when damage is limited, the message remains powerful. Ukraine is trying to make Russian energy assets feel exposed, especially in regions linked to exports and economic activity. The attacks came as St. Petersburg was preparing for a major economic forum, which gave the strikes a psychological and political effect beyond the physical damage. Russia has worked to show that normal life and high-level diplomacy can continue despite the war. Drone attacks near such a setting challenge that message. They suggest that distance from Ukraine does not guarantee insulation from the conflict. For Kyiv, long-range UAVs help connect battlefield pressure with pressure inside Russia itself. The aim is not only to destroy one ship or one tank farm. It is to force Moscow to defend more territory, protect more infrastructure, and manage more uncertainty across a wider map. The St. Petersburg strikes expanded the drone war into strategic depth. Together, these targets link the deep rear with daily combat support and show how pressure can now move across several layers of war. At the same time, Ukraine continues to target smaller but more direct assets near the occupied front, including transport vehicles, Bukhanka vans, and communication antennas. Beyond strategic targets and logistics routes, Ukrainian UAV units continue to strike transport vehicles, Bukhanka vans, communication antennas, and other support assets across occupied territories. These targets may appear less important than artillery systems or fuel depots, yet they keep military operations connected and coordinated. A battlefield is not sustained by weapons alone. It also depends on the flow of information between commanders, frontline units, drone operators, and support elements. Communication antennas have become especially important because modern warfare depends on constant data exchange. Infantry units need to report enemy movement. Artillery crews need targeting information. Drone operators need coordinates and updates. Command posts need to receive reports and issue orders. When an antenna is destroyed, the effect may not be immediately visible. Unlike a burning vehicle or an exploding ammunition depot, a damaged communication site often produces no dramatic image. Messages may take longer to reach frontline units. Commanders may receive reports more slowly. Small delays can become important during fast-moving combat situations. This is significant in areas where drones are active on both sides. Reconnaissance platforms, strike drones, and surveillance assets all depend on information moving quickly between operators and command structures. A weaker communication network can reduce the speed of decision-making and make battlefield coordination more difficult. Transport vehicles also remain important targets. Bukhanka vans and other light vehicles are often used to move personnel, equipment, repair teams, and supplies between positions. They may not attract as much attention as armored vehicles, but they support everyday military activity. The pattern visible across recent Ukrainian drone operations suggests a wider strategy. Infantry groups have faced pressure near the front. Logistics vehicles and fuel carriers have been targeted behind active sectors. Strategic sites have come under threat deep inside Russian territory. Communication systems and support vehicles now face similar risks. The result is pressure across multiple layers of the battlefield rather than a focus on one type of target. From Lyman to Donetsk, Ukrainian UAV operations continue expanding the number of places where Russian forces must remain alert. That broader pattern raises a larger question about how effectively Russia can maintain military operations in an environment where observation and strike capabilities continue to expand. That question will shape the conclusion, because Ukraine's drone campaign is no longer only about battlefield damage, but about whether Russia's entire war system can keep absorbing pressure. Ukraine's drone campaign is no longer only a series of dramatic battlefield videos. It is becoming a methodical attempt to weaken the system that allows Russia to fight every day. The targets may vary, from infantry groups and vehicles to fuel, antennas, fire support assets, and locations far behind the front, yet the purpose is connected. Kyiv is trying to make Russian movement slower, command less certain, and support operations more costly. For Moscow, the challenge is adaptation. More camouflage, more air defense, and more electronic warfare may reduce some losses, but they cannot remove the basic problem. The battlefield is becoming easier to observe and harder to hide from. The next phase may depend on which side adjusts faster. If Ukraine keeps expanding its drone network, Russia may face a war where survival depends not only on firepower, but on how long its entire military system can absorb pressure. If you found this analysis useful, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who follow military affairs and global events. The goal of this channel is not to celebrate war, but to understand it. By studying weapons, tactics, and battlefield decisions, we can better understand the human, political, and economic costs that conflicts create. Thank you for watching Military Force. Stay informed, stay curious, and join us again for more in-depth analysis of the battles, technologies, and geopolitical developments shaping today's world.